Hello, Namira.
Hey,
How are you doing?
doing great. It's an
Fantastic.
amazing event. Thank you so much, Naomi, for running it, and thanks everyone to participating.
I am so excited. Webhooks have always gone right over my head, and it wasn't actually until I met both of you and sat down to see what you both do here at Customer.io to sync a lot of the data together that I was able to understand what the power of webhooks are. So I'm going to hand it over to both of you to take over. We have some fun polls coming up, so everybody get ready. It's going to be a real poll similar to yesterday and not what I just did this morning. But yeah, handing it over to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Naomi, and welcome everyone. We're very excited to talk to you about the world of webhooks and APIs. So for instance, I'm just gonna publish a poll. Let me know in the comments if you can see that. Okay, so this is just a guess. So on average, how many API calls do you think a person does every day just by using their smartphones? Okay, some interesting numbers. Let's just wait for a minute. Okay, it seems like it's between 7K and 20K. Okay, 7K is winning, not anymore. Okay, well, actually, on average, we do pretty much about 20K API calls every day just by using our smartphones. Why? Because think about that. Each phone makes around between 10 and 100 calls every day, every minute, just by uploading data into the cloud. And most of the smartphones has a bunch of apps, and they work pretty much 24 hours a day. So yeah, 20K is a roughly good average. Thank you for your answers. Yeah, you were correct. The majority vote 20K. So what is an API? So API stands pretty much for Application Program Interface, but I think it's a term way too long for what it does actually, which is connecting apps. Think about an app as a piece of code that lives in the server. You can connect a bunch of small apps into a larger app, something like a puzzle. And each part of the puzzle is connected through an API. So for example, your app when you are ordering food. So actually it has 100 of apps running in the backend to deliver that tasty ramen to your door. So let's take, for example, three of the apps of the examples. So you can have the price app, you can have the review app, and you can have your login app. So let's take, for example, one small app. Let's say about just a review app. So in order for this app to work, you will need to pass some data inputs. That can be, for example, the name of your restaurant, the name of the rider that delivered the food to you, and the stars that you just gave it to that. So these data flows that comes into the API is what makes the API work, and this is what we call API definition. So it is when an API is making a request, it needs some input data to work. On the other hand, we have the webhooks. So instead, if you just want to send data to a server in order to make something happen, that's what we call a webhook. So the majority of the APIs are 100%. I mean, the majority of the APIs are publicly. Some of them are not, but they need to be protected somehow in order to avoid some spam and just overloading the servers. And that's when the API comes in. So think about an API key such as a username and a password that will uniquely identify you. And there's pretty much an API for everything you think. You can get an API for YouTube, for Gmail, or for ChatGPT. So the possibilities are really endless.
I have a quick question, Georgia.
Yeah.
Is there any slides to follow along?
Not really.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure. You're doing a great job. I'm off.
Okay.
Carry on.
Thank you. So if you're wondering where to start using APIs, you just have to dive into the API documentation of the app that you are planning to use.
Thank you, Georgia. I have another poll for you, and just published about what processes can be automated and benefit from utilizing webhooks? Okay, I can think how all of them can benefit, but let me rephrase. What processes are most often automated using webhooks? Okay, the most popular answer is syncing a CRM with an ASP. That's correct. And I think, yeah, everyone is well aware that it's hard to automate a marketing research. Doable, but not the case. So for today, we have two goals. First would be to show you how we are using webhooks and API on real tasks. And second would be to inspire you, because I had an impression that people perceive webhooks and API as something super complex that requires hours of learning or technical background, and that's not the case. At least to start using them in your day-to-day work, in your marketing processes, I know a few hours will be enough to get a first impression and to start playing with it. So if each of you after this session will go and try to build something, that would be great. We would love that. And at the end, we will share an Notion doc with a list of different links and tools that will help you to save time, and they will help you to faster learn API. And also there we will put all requests that we are going to show you today. I think, Giorgio, I will start with mine. And for our first example, I took a Livestorm webinar. And I took one of the real processes we currently have. It all starts with the webinar tool. We are using Livestorm, but I believe most of the modern webinar tools, they have webhook capabilities. So what it does, it enables you to set up a webhook that will send a notification to your system every time when something happens. So in this case, for my example, I created two webhooks. First is new registrant, and another one is event is published. My goal would be to first, after each webinar, I want to know about each user's engagement. I want to know what their behavior was. Did they join? Did they participate? Did they ask questions? And for the second webhook, event is published. That's for me to get metrics about the event itself. For example, when an event starts, a webinar starts, I want to get notified in Slack about how many registrants we have. And so after you set up a webhook, when you set up a webhook, you need to specify where this webhook should go to. In our case, we are using our own platform, and have a campaign that will be triggered by this webhook. So for example, when someone registers, you have a campaign triggered when something comes to this endpoint. So when creating a webhook, I will copy a trigger, enter it here, and then campaign will be live. So what I wanted to show you today, that, for example, our event, I created a test webinar, and the logic of my campaign is that when an event is published, we are waiting for this event to start. And here, for that, we are using one of the events attribute. And after it happens, we are sending another webhook to our not webhook, an API call to our Livestorm system. to collect events data. That's how it looks like. That's how you set it up. You specify endpoint, enter API key, that's a dummy one, and you define what you're going to do with the response. So in this case, I will delete my, and sorry, it looks like I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you for letting me know, Georgia. It was hard to start without a mistake. Okay. Okay, now you should be able to see it. So initially I showed you a Livestorm platform interface where I showed that you can set up webhooks and choose a trigger. And in my campaign, I will show you what will happen after that. So we already have one test event waiting here to start. So let's imagine that the event has started and we want to collect test metrics. We want to collect metrics. How many participants did we have? And we want to send a Slack message with those metrics. That's how it will look like. So do you see a screen with Slack?
No, just the customer.
No. Okay. That's the final message. I get notified every time when a webinar goes live, and here I see how many registrants do we have. So I'll go back to my campaign. It all was done using 2 API calls. In the first call, I'm sending a GET request to Livestorm, our webinar system, to get number of participants. That's how a response could look like. So it tells me that we have 3 registrants. And in the next step, I have a post request to Slack where I specify my message, what I want to share. Another use case for Livestorm would be, oops, not that one. To work with a person. So here I have 2 fake registrants. To make sure, Giorgio, can you please confirm that I am sharing the Livestorm webinar registration page?
Yes. No, just the customer IO workspace.
And so for 2 users, first I want to learn how they behaved in our event. So that's a GET request to our Livestorm platform. Here I can specify a webinar I'm curious about, and this information comes together with a registration event. So when someone registers for the webinar, we receive this information. And a response here could look like that. So my fake person didn't attend a webinar, didn't send any messages, didn't ask any questions. That's why metrics look like that. The cool thing is that we can capture any parameter from our response and save it to our user attributes to use later, maybe in campaigns to personalize them, in lead scoring, almost anywhere. And one more step here, it's a fun one to play with. I added a ChatGPT step everyone is talking about ChatGPT. So I thought it might be cool to show that you can also send a post request there, create a request like that. Please use some of the user attributes and please write a funny haiku about our user. And that's how our response will look like. That's something random that we can later use in our email communication. So, Giorgio, please take over. I took too much time.
It's fine, no
Please
worries.
start your part.
Yes. So okay. So I will be. Can you all confirm that you can see my page? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will be covering one use case that it might be very useful for some of the people that are here right now. So is when you are deploying an email, so as a developer, you are creating an email, sometimes you don't get the data when the email has been sent to the people, right? You don't get to see the KPIs, or you don't get to see when it was sent. So the idea pretty much here is I created this campaign. I already sent an email and did some interactions with those emails in order to get some data. And then we have 21 people here waiting to go through the following steps. So in the first one, we are just calling an API, a customer IO API, because this is the system that we are using here for sending this email. What is happening here is that we are getting the metrics from a specific action. So if we just send a test here, for example, as you can see, we are getting all the data from all the KPI, all the metrics activities. So if the message has been failed, if it has been opened, sent, and so on. And then we are storing all these metrics in specific attributes in one specific user. Then with this, of course, our end goal is to then send all these KPIs in a compact and easy message, perhaps at the end of the week, or at the beginning of the month, or pretty much anything that you prefer, to inform anyone that has been involved while creating or crafting this email. So the second step will be just getting the name of the email. In this case is test email number 1. So as you can see, if we send a test in here, we should get the name of the email for then using that as part of the message in Slack. And then we are just retrieving the API location of all the users that have been delivered this email. So why we are getting this data? Pretty much for any use case. We can get this data for getting just their exact location, for then retargeting them, or we can eventually get their country or their language, for then sending tailored communications in that languages. So let me just do a test. Yeah, so this is just a random IP address. This is how the request would look like. It is a GET request because we are requesting data from the server. In this case, we're using API data.co, which is a website that you can get access to. So if we send the testing here, your response should look something like this. So the city of the API, if it has, of course, the data, the country name, the emoji flag eventually, the career, the languages, the currency, the time zone. There's a lot of data that you can play with by using this request. And the last step will be updating the records of all the metrics into just one single user. In this case, I'm using this test user, which is just a fake email, and then just sending at the end of that week, or perhaps at the end of the month, or any time that you would prefer, a Slack message. So if I just delete this step, so I will let everything run. Okay, people is arriving. Let me just refresh the page. Let's just go to this Slack message. Go to metrics, which is my test user for this specific case. Okay, and then let's just send a request to Slack. I created a Slack app. You can create a Slack app and set up your API keys, or use just simple webhooks to send messages to specific channels. Let's send the test. It went through correctly. So now let's just see how it would look on Slack. And this is pretty much the message that we just crafted. So the test is, this is the name of the email, and these are some key metrics. But feel free to just play around with this. You can calculate any marketing KPIs, such as the CTO rate, or pretty much anything. And that's it.
Thank you, Giorgio. I'll share a link to our Notion page to the chat. Okay. Naomi, would it be the best place to share?
Yep. Put it in the chat. I said the chat before last, but I came to terms that I am a real muggle today. And it is because wizards like you doing all this crazy stuff with webhooks and code and stuff. And I'm learning slowly. I am the junior dev. Thank you both so much. Those are just so cool to see actionable use cases for webhooks, and definitely help explain what they're all about. Rodrigo, muggles are the best. They were always my favorite character in Harry Potter, so I do not take it as a diss. Do not worry. I would encourage everyone to take a look at the Notion doc that Namira just dropped in the chat. There's a ton of really great stuff in there. And I will get them working on some more information about ChatGPT, because that seemed to intrigue a lot of people. So really, really cool. Thank you both so much for putting this together. Yeah, really appreciate you both coming on board.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for support and for listening.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining.
All right, up next, we do have our next group of speakers, Ivan, Sarah, and Carla, coming on in a couple minutes. But before that, we have another, drum roll please, quick debugging session from Mark, even though he's in Europe on a completely different time zone right now. He has taken the courtesy of pre-recording all of these.